Hello and welcome to Bedson and Coffee Unfiltered,
where we will be discussing fitness, lifestyle, healthy eating habits, relationships, gas station performance pills, answering romantic queries. You have anything else, Tyler? Is there anything? Do you need help with anything right now? Because I feel like I'm in a position where I can help you with it.
I mean, and everything else that we come across as we go. But you know what it's going to be, right?
It's going to be unfiltered.
All right. So today we have a special guest. We have Brant. Brant, you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about what you do as far as running a media page, bodybuilding, life, anything you want to tell us to get started.
Yeah, sure, man. So I'm Brant Imhoff. I will probably most be known for running a classic-physique page. It's called CPC Bodybuilding, or Classic-Physique Co. for the full name.
Yeah.
But I got into bodybuilding probably about, let's say, 5 years ago. So I compete myself as an NPC competitor, kind of on the natural side.
Yeah.
Just did my first national show, took third place at USA's in bantamweight. And yeah, I've been just immersed in bodybuilding these past few years, and I just love the sport and decided that classic physique needed a little bit more coverage and a little bit more of a spotlight on some of the athletes outside of, like, you know, the top five, like the Chris Bumsteads of the world.
Yes,
sure.
That's where I first learned about you. Like I really started seeing your page, and you're reposting a lot of guys that needed recognition, that, you know, were trying to get their names out there. And that's where I learned about some of the athletes that were coming up. You know, it was through your page before anybody else. Was I would see some of the top amateurs that were about to go turn pro. And that really opened up, I think, a lot of new media for different levels of competition.
Yeah, and there's so many great athletes out there, especially on the amateur side too, man. Like, just guys with insane physiques who may not get that coverage. Like, just because before my page, really the only people that I could think of who were covering bodybuilding in depth were Daniel, so Bodybuilders Without Borders, obviously biggest name in the game. I think of, like, Cube's Health and Fitness. He was another guy. Hart McGrath with, like, men's physique. He was one of the guys who really, like, inspired me to start covering some of the other names, just because of his eye, his level of detail for everything. But the thing is, if you're covering so many different divisions, like Bodybuilders Without Borders, it's like you can't necessarily dive deep into one division, and classic was still kind of on the rise a few years ago. So it wasn't necessarily getting the attention that maybe an open bodybuilding was getting. And I just saw an opportunity, and you know, I just love the sport, man. That's all it is at the end of the day. Is like, you know, I thought a lot more people deserved attention. There's so many guys who just work so hard and deserve the recognition. So that's kind of where things stem from for me.
Absolutely. So before we talk more about your page and the media that you work with and so on, what got you into bodybuilding? Like, how did you get started? When was your first show?
Yeah. So just background, I got into fitness in general about a decade ago. I was in college. Like, I played sports growing up, but I was always kind of a chubby kid. And, you know, there was a moment where I realized, I was like, you know, I'm really good at school, but, like, I need something else to get good at. And I was 20 years old, so I'm 29 now for perspective. And I just started lifting, you know, just to get back in shape. And I fell in love with training, man. That's where my love for bodybuilding comes from, is just loving being in the gym, training hard, and just challenging yourself physically and mentally. And from there, I just did hypertrophy style training for a few years.
Sure.
Ended up getting into competitive powerlifting, which I did in grad school for a couple of years. The last meet I ever did was Collegiate Nationals in 2019. And then from powerlifting, I was training out of a powerlifting gym back in 2019, 2020. And this was in Washington, D.C. when I lived there. And I met a bodybuilding coach there who's a men's physique pro. And he was like, hey, man, you got a good frame. Like, have you ever thought about competing? I was like, the thoughts crossed my mind. But I had never really pulled the trigger on it. And so he and I started working together for a brief amount of time. And I just, fell in love with the process. And from there, I decided to compete in 2022 after I moved to Tennessee. So I did my first show in Memphis in April of 2022. And so I've been coaching myself the entirety of my competitive career. So I'd mentioned I've worked with a coach before, but I decided to just, try my hand at coaching myself just due to some philosophical differences between previous coaches that I had. And I did my first show in Memphis in 2022. Won my true novice class, won my novice class.
What division did you do?
Classic physique. I only did classic physique at my first show. And ever since then, I've done bodybuilding and classic since.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Which I feel like your physique fits both of them. So I've told you that before. It's like, it's one of those things where you can excel in both because you've got good aesthetics. So that helps a lot with, especially with classic, but in bantamweight bodybuilding, which is, it's interesting, man, because like I remember bantamweight gets a lot of shit sometimes, and like even me in middleweight, I get a lot of shit. They're like, okay, like, but I don't think people realize like a lot of us are shorter guys and that's our genetic limit for a lot of us. So doing it natural, the bantamweight guys get shredded. Like I've seen some of the most peeled people in bantamweight lightweight. So what do you feel though is the difference between going against some of these guys and as a natural competitor when you're going against guys that are probably using something to give them an advantage?
Yeah. So first thing for me is, even though I compete naturally, bodybuilding's bodybuilding.
Yep.
I do it because I love it. It's me trying to better myself. And to me, using PEDs is just a personal choice. And, to me, it's like to each his own. I just choose not to. Yeah. There's no reason to really care about that at the end of the day. But as a natural guy, so for context, I've done 6 NPC shows, 5 of which are just untested regular NPC shows. I've only done 1 natural NPC show ever. So to me, it's really not about competing against, people on like a level playing field. That doesn't really matter to me. But you have to be realistic when you're a natural guy competing against guys who are using PEDs and understand what the criteria of bodybuilding is. So knowing that you're up against guys who have a propensity to put on more muscle than you, you have to be prepared mentally to know you may lose a show because you're not going to be the biggest guy on stage.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there? Well, what are the things within my control? I can control my shape and my aesthetics, so I can tailor my training to basically sculpt my physique as to where, everything's proportional, everything's aesthetic, and, I'm balanced, I have good flow. And you can also control your condition. You can come in as sharp as you possibly can.
Yep.
And, at the end of the day, the judges are going to pick what they like. And it's out of your control. So to me, it's always just been about, I'm going to bring my best look. I'm going to make sure I, come in peeled. I bring a proportionate physique and bring up my weak body parts, and also just really work on presentation. Presentation is so key, man.
Yes.
Just bringing good, polished posing, just being fundamentally sound. I don't overcomplicate things. I try to keep my posing concise, show my strong points, and I just let the judges do their thing. At the end of the day, if I win, great. If not, I brought my best, and I'm content with that.
And that's the thing. I mean, I think so many people get, caught up with that. You can't You can't determine who's going to show up. And it's not like some other sports where you can prepare and build a game plan for another team or another individual. It's really just you bringing the best that you have and displaying it as best that you can, and continuing to try to work on that. And like you said, those are the things you have control of. You knew when the show date was. So there's, it takes a long time to build muscle, but there should never be any question about conditioning because you knew when the show date was, but no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So question. All right. So I personally love coaching natural people. I think it's a lot of fun because there's not a lot to rely on as far as extra supplementation, so it's a lot based on work ethic, training intensity, your cardio regimen, like everything has to be very, very to the point. Like you can't mess up. Mm-hmm. So what are some supplements that you still do use naturally to give you just every bit of the extra % of advantage you can get?
Yeah, so I would say the non-negotiables for me, I get asked this pretty frequently too, especially because as a natural guy, I think it's really important to monitor your hormones, simply because, you can really just crash out your hormones if you're not careful with the pace at which you're dieting.
Yep.
A lot of guys, you see a lot of these influencers who are the natural guys who they're like, oh, I just got my testosterone back and it's double digits, which is very problematic.
Yes.
You definitely don't want to be walking around with double digit testosterone. So the things that I rely on are vitamin D, fish oil, magnesium, zinc, creatine, obviously caffeine. If you're dieting and caffeine's not in there, it's great as an appetite suppressant, great for bringing a little extra energy to the table, some cognitive support. Something I did differently this contest prep was ashwagandha. That's something I supplemented with. So that's, extra testosterone support, although, the body of literature is a bit mixed on liver toxicity. So that's kind of one of those things where it's like, you may want to take it within certain periods of time and kind of lay off it at some point. So now that I'm reverse dieting now, I pulled ashwagandha out of there. But and then also something different I did this time was nicotine. Nicotine has been very instrumental for cognitive focus for me. It also boosts testosterone. And another thing too, where I don't think a lot of people realize that it can be beneficial is, granted, if your gut health and your diet is on point, it can really, really help you with, being able to, be regular with contest prep. It's something that a lot of people have trouble with, especially the closer you get to a show.
Yeah.
You touched on something there, and I think so many people, they can't see the forest for the trees, but like when we talk about supplements and these things that we may add, that is saying that we've already got our diet, our training, our recovery, everything to a point. And like you said there, if nothing else, if our diet's not on point, we're training, there's no amount of supplementation that's going to make up for that. All these things can and will help whenever everything else is on point though. But that's, I think that's where people miss it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. The non-negotiables, it's like, there's a hierarchy to everything. It's like, you have to first nail your training and nutrition are the top two. You could say one's more important than the other, and I wouldn't argue with you. Definitely, training and nutrition, your recovery is incredibly important too. If you're not sleeping well, everything else is gonna
exactly. Yep.
And then supplementation after that.
Yeah, I really like how you touched on nicotine because it's something that I use as well for work purposes, and just overall it helps me quite a bit as far as beneficial aspects. And I feel like a lot of people, when they think of nicotine, they just think of like smoking a cigarette. But there's so many different ways to consume nicotine now, and you can dose it in very small doses and get a lot of good benefits that can help with performance, cognitive function, and so many other things. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it is a very useful tool for bodybuilding. Not trying to tell everybody like you got to go use nicotine, but it's one of those things that I have noticed does help.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've definitely noticed a difference too, especially cognitively. That's something that has really, really beneficially, impacted me over the past few months. Just because it's like when you get to that vegetable state of prep where you're just like
brain fog,
everything,
yeah,
blurry, and like you don't have energy. It hurts to sit down. It's like, and ultimately you got a job to do. Like most of us who bodybuild aren't doing this full time. Like I have a day job that I have to do that requires me to be very sharp mentally. And, nicotine is just one of the tools that I, pulled out of the toolbox to, help me still do my job, make a living, and then ultimately do this bodybuilding thing on the side.
That's me. I mean, with the cognitive function, like, for as you are dieting down and you get that brain fog, and you got to be dialed in, it is helpful. And, if I've got a lot of emails to get to and plans to build and so on, just that little bit of bump in that cognitive function, it really helps you dial in. It helps you focus. But also I've noticed too, when going about it the way that we do in the micro doses and as needed kind of, if I go a day without it, I don't feel so bad. It's not like you're, and there's obviously a difference too that I don't think a lot of people yet consider in the, the source of the nicotine, the quality of it, the, not getting it from breathing in a fire, but actually, food grade nicotine as compared to some other sources and so on.
Yeah, spot on, man.
So with your classic physique page, like we talked about, that's where I first heard about you, and like you were really building that up. So what are some of the things that made you want to start that? Like, I know that you mentioned there was just a few people that you used to follow, like Bodybuilders Without Borders. I remember This Is Bodybuilding used to be a page that was there, but they only really posted, the top athletes and all that. And like you said, Classic wasn't really given much of a platform. But now I feel like Classic is a little bit bigger than bodybuilding as far as numbers. And it's grown like tremendously over the past few years. So where do you get a lot of your information from? Like, where are you finding some of these people? Like, are people sending them to you? Do they message you their own pictures and want to be featured, or like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, it's a variety of different things, man. So in terms of where I find these guys is, I follow a lot of people. I follow a lot of different pages. So obviously through the timeline is probably the primary source. So just like looking and sifting out, just when you see a physique that is crazy, that's one of the things that I'm like, okay, well, I got to follow this guy. Or I do get a lot of DMs too. Like people will just send me stuff. A lot of people will send me their own stuff, tag me in their own stuff, which is a great way. But also just staying up to date on competitions and whatnot. And I know we've got like dozens of NPC shows every weekend. We've got at least 2 or 3 classic shows on the pro side every weekend. And just kind of staying up to date on those shows and following people who are at the shows, as well as paying attention to the show's Instagram page. Like, you can follow along to a lot of these shows. Like, for example, we had the Atlanta Pro that was going on Friday. You can follow the show page, keep up with all the stories. That's a really good way to do it. But also just looking through and not just seeing people who podium necessarily. So like that top 5, top 6.
Yeah. Because
there are a lot of physiques that may not place in that top 5, top 6 who could go on the next week and win the show.
Yep.
That's what's crazy about Classic is you can have a guy place 6th or 7th at Atlanta, and then he goes on next week to another show and win the show.
Yep.
Like that's how deep classic physique is. And it also speaks to just how good some of these guys are. And I also think different judges look for different things too. I've been to enough bodybuilding shows in person, watched plenty from like live streams and whatnot. And, if you show up in front of a different panel, they may favor you just based on look, depending on what you bring. Like some judges may prefer more of a balance between fullness and structure. Some judges may prefer conditioning. So ultimately, I think just paying attention to the variety of sources. There's also obviously NPC News Online. It's an awesome thing that I don't think a lot of people really realize. It's like we've got all these photos that are for free online, and you can just find all of these shows. You can search people. So it's like there's plenty of tools out there if you want to start a media page. It's just you got to do the legwork, really.
One thing I did wanted to talk about, because I wanted to see your opinion on it. The classic physique lineup at the Olympia has gotten exponentially bigger over the years. Like I think there last year was over like 60 athletes or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Do you think they should start limiting the amount of Olympia qualifications for that division?
It's a tough subject, man, because obviously promoters are doing this because bodybuilding is a business. You got to make money.
Yeah.
And the more shows you have, the more money the federation's going to make. So I completely understand that. But to me, if you are trying to judge 60, 70 guys, and I know Big Steve's got the eye for it. I'm not questioning that. But it becomes really, really difficult to like sift out a physique and just like physically get the guys on the stage. Like, how are you going to get 60 or 70 guys on the stage at one time, Or just like when it comes to timing of everything, like running people through quarter turns. If you watch the Olympia, it's like just going through the quarter turns alone now, it's like 45 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
To me, that's a little too long. And I think this is just my opinion, but I think it takes a little bit of the prestige of qualifying for the Olympia. It brings it down a touch. Qualifying for the Olympia is still like a phenomenal thing. It's a phenomenal accomplishment. But at the end of the day, if the show gets smaller, the prestige is going to increase. But we've talked about solutions to this, and I've had people on my podcast too talk about this, guys who've been to the Olympia and competed there multiple times, done well. I think a really good way to do it would be to have like a preliminary round where you're getting your Olympia qualification, and there's like either a morning show or a day one show where you have to basically qualify for the next day. So it's like you eliminate some people that first day or in the morning show, and then you go on to the night show or the day two show. And that's where, you get your top 15, your top 20, just to really kind of like weed out everybody and get a good look at those top guys. That's the way I would do it. I know we used to have the point system as well, which once you kind of move on from something, you don't want to go back to it, right?
Yeah.
So I think the point system's kind of out of the question now. You could even do something where it's like different shows qualify you for different things. So we have these bigger, more prestigious shows, if you will, like Tampa, Texas, Chicago, spots like that where you're getting these really, really deep lineups and some heavy hitters in there, where those shows automatically maybe qualify you for that big show. You already move on past the preliminaries, where it's like some of these smaller shows where you only have a few guys show up. Those get you to the preliminary round, but you still gotta go through that in order to get to the bigger show. That's just one of the solutions I suggested, but there's a million ways to skin a cat. So I think there's a lot of solutions to it, but personally, I think we should whittle down the field a little bit more, just because it's like that's way too many people. And honestly, from a fan's perspective too, because ultimately I'm just a fan of the sport too. It's way too long. It's way too long. We need to make these shows a little bit quicker, especially if you got all these different divisions. So and out of respect to the athletes too, man. If you're an athlete and you've been there, it's like peaking becomes a lot harder when there's so many people who have to go on stage and timing wise just trying to nail everything, you know. So I think it would, you know, make our athletes look better. It would also satisfy the fans a little bit more. So that's why I would be in favor of bringing things down a little bit in numbers.
Yeah. Make it more prestigious too, you know, like I feel like an Olympia qualification for some of the divisions now is like, okay, well, there's so many of them. It doesn't make it as exciting because there's some lackluster physiques in there that probably would not have won if they would have went to one of the bigger shows. So I think a big problem now too is like, it's been so many years now since Classic came out. I can't remember the official year. But they're still doing top 2 pro cards for every class. Mm-hmm. When in reality, I feel like that might be time soon to pull that back and make it a bit more challenging to receive a pro card. Cause you know, we're giving out at least 8 pro cards every national show. And that's creating a lot of classic physique pros who, you know, it's making it so easy. And I feel like we need to kind of slow it down like we did bodybuilding. Because bodybuilding, like, you know, is extremely hard to get a pro card in. Like, you have to either win your class or you have to win, and then you have to get top 3 in the overall. And it's just very challenging. So I feel like that would help to make it a little bit more exciting, prestigious, make it so it matters a little bit more. And I just feel like we're getting, I know it's all about making money. Like that's the key.
You got to find where it overlaps.
It's a business model, but it's like, I feel like a prestige way would be a lot better. Like you said, having some way to where you had to qualify and then you had to qualify to be in the top 20 would be a good idea.
Yeah, the pro card situation is an interesting one too, because it always gets talked about. I always notice a spike in conversation when Junior USA's comes around every single year, especially because, you know, that's the first national show every year, and they give out 2 pro cards in every class in classic physique. And there's some great athletes who, you know, get second place pro cards. There are great athletes that come out of Junior USA's. Like, just off the top of my head, I think of like Daniel Fagoti won Junior USA's a couple years back. Like Ben Hodge. There's some like dogs who come out of Junior USA's, but like, generally speaking, it's not a very deep show.
Not at all.
And you could question a lot of the second place pro cards because a lot of these guys end up just taking 2-3 years off. Like you said, they're not pro ready. So they take the time off to get there, which really, you know, kind of speaks to, I don't know, the prestige of things again. So I think I do like the class winner solution. Yeah. If you just made that for every single national show, because it varies within shows even. Like, I know junior nationals, they only do class winners. But Universe, it's top 2. USA's, it's top 2. NPC Nationals, it's top 2. But like Amateur Olympia, I think it's just
the top 2 overall, I think. Or
top 2 in the overall. So it's not even class, like all the class winners, but they only do 3 classes at the Amateur Olympia, I believe. So I do like the solution of class winners only, but you know, there is a caveat where there's some really good guys. I had a list going for a little bit of like second place pro card winners who have gone on and done great things, like Justin Batterina, a good friend of mine, who is one of the best in the world right now in classic physique. He was a second place pro card.
That's wild.
People don't realize
he's got insane physique.
Second place pro cards.
A lot of times, you know, you can't determine who shows up. And to your point earlier, you know, you have a guy that takes second there that would have crushed in another show, took first. You know, so sometimes, you know, to your point again, you know, that class being as it is, you know, some of these guys taking second, they just drew a tough hand, you know, and they had one guy in there that was just, you know, a little bit better. But I mean, to even place top 2 in some of these, the physique is unreal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think a cool idea though is like, so for example, like junior SA, as we talked about, it's a little bit smaller. Like I've seen like 6 people in Class A at times, and you compare that to NPC Nationals where you got 48 in a class, and I think that that's fair at Nationals to give away 2 pro cards per class when there's that many people, because there are some great physiques. But I think when there's less than 10 in a class, it should only be 1. And that might be a good way to separate it, because there's no reason for 2 out of 6 people to be eligible for a pro card whenever the chances of your pro card becomes like 33%. Like, you know, which is crazy to think about. So it's getting to a point where I think it needs to be based off of numbers. And because we do have some shows that are massive. Like I've had guys win their pro card in Class B before, and they got second place, but they went against 51. And that's insane, because I'm like, how do you even separate it at that point? How do you compare? Like you said, there's so many physiques. It's easy to overlook somebody or forget that physique, and then they end up in second call outs, and you're like, oh shit. And I've seen that happen a few times where they've had somebody come from second call outs and that person moves up to 5th later in the day. But I'm like, what if they were compared with that top 5 earlier? Sure. And they didn't even get that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, judging fatigue's a real thing too that people don't talk about, because they're scared to. As athletes, you don't want to. And listen, I'm an athlete myself, so I try to be careful with my words, but like judging fatigue's a real thing. It's like if you're sitting there all day looking at physiques, and it's like you gotta judge 50 or 60 people, it's gonna be really, really hard to just like parse out the best, consistently and get it right every single time. And that's just the human nature of the sport in itself too. So
especially on these levels of shows, whenever you're just splitting hairs between placings.
Yeah, exactly, man. Because sometimes it's like it comes down to like the littlest things. Like sometimes it comes down to your tan. Sometimes it comes down to your posing trunks. Even like it's the little things that matter too. When you're at these high level shows, and there's the best of the best there.
Yeah, that's like I had a guy at Universe, and he was in the center position spot pretty much the entire time. And they did favorite classic physique pose, but they did it 3 times. And on the 3rd time, he decided to throw a different classic physique pose. And Tyler Manning did not like it and immediately moved him out from center stage, and he got second. And I was like, it came down to 1 pose. And that's an example. And then I remember Daniel Fabodi, who talked about, I remember his feedback he told me was they told him to wear his trunks up a little higher. So it really does come down to every inch of displaying your physique possible and what you do. Because if you make yourself seem weak in a certain pose and expose yourself,
absolutely,
even if you are the strongest physique on stage in most poses, and then you do a pose that doesn't suit your body, you could be out of that top lineup.
It's who displays their physique best, right?
Yep.
It's not necessarily who has the best physique, it's who can display it the best.
Or even if you do a pose that the judge doesn't really care for. I'll give you an example. My twisting back double bicep is like easily one of my best shots. And what I would do was that, I would hit a front shot. Typically for your favorite classic pose, you want to hit a front shot, right? Front, maybe even a side shot. You don't want to hit a back shot. You want your face facing the judges as much as possible. But, I did the hit a front pose, then transition to the twisting back double bicep. And I still won the overall at the show, but like my feedback from Bill was like, we don't want to see the twisting back double at all. Like, don't hit a back pose at all. Whereas like some judges, they'll be like, if it's a strong pose, you should just transition to it after. So it's like, even the judge, I think, matters too. So it's like, you gotta, I think something that's overlooked too is like, you got to get out there and get on the national stage a bit and learn what the judges want. And that's ultimately going to help you like get that pro card, because like some judges like certain things, and you just got to know.
Yeah, and that feedback's invaluable. And that's what we talk about all the time, is getting that judge's feedback, making those adjustments. And you don't know until you ask. Being in front of those judges and being seen on those levels, that gives you the information and the feedback that you need to make those corrections to essentially finally break through.
Yeah. That's the same thing. Like I have a buddy that's doing North Americans, and last year he competed in super heavy, but he's still got the ability to shrink down to heavyweight. And I told him, I was like, man, that's probably going to be your best idea, because they're going to reward conditioning more in heavyweight, while in super heavyweight, they're sometimes going to reward size and mass. And you don't want to be the smallest super heavy when you can be the biggest heavy. So it's one of those things where you got to kind of pick and choose where you land. And I see so many people that don't want to do certain divisions nowadays that are built for that division. Like, I don't know why, but they'll be like, I don't want to do classic, or I don't want to do bodybuilding, but they're like, that's where they would excel. And I think it's one of those things where you need to be open more about that nowadays. Like, for example, your physique fits both. So why not do both? But for me, I tried doing classic one time and I got my ass kicked because I had, I went against guys that were just had more flow and they could twist, and I just looked like a bodybuilder. So, and it's kind of one thing with bodybuilding is I feel like you have to go where your body allows you.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, because you can build with your aesthetics, but if you got a blocky waist, like I've seen so many people now, it's like there's a lot of figure girls that I think should be doing women's physique. And it's just a better area for you to go to where you could excel at a higher level.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's again another reason why to ask for feedback from the judges, because they're going to give it to you straight. They'll tell you exactly. Some judges more than others. Some of them will be very, very candid. Some of them will be a little bit more delicate. But either way, you really need to listen to what they say and just be open-minded, man. Because some people, are going to be sensitive about it, and I think the judges, they're going to give you what you need. Because some people don't want to have like the hard conversations with themselves, or even like your loved ones or your close friends. Like some people just don't have the hard conversations in bodybuilding, but the judges will always steer you in the right direction.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people, when they talk about genetics, a lot of times they want to talk about size and they talk about bodybuilding, but the genetics required for some of these other classes are very much real as well. If you don't have that naturally smaller waistline and that flow for classic, or even that small waistline for men's physique, or that, the aesthetics for bikini and so on, then obviously the idea would be to move into a class that you are better suited for structurally. And I think so many people are a fan of a certain class, so much so that they don't consider whether or not their particular physique is what it takes for that class. Sometimes getting ourselves out of the way, and getting that feedback and hearing it, even from a coach, even from your coach, if your coach is shooting you straight, and kind of nudging you in the directions you need to go that's going to be best suited for you. It's the genetics thing carries across the board. It's like there's certain classes that fit for certain people.
Yeah, exactly, man. Genetics is a very important thing, just bone structure.
Absolutely.
Muscle insertions, just propensity to build muscle in general.
Yeah.
Like some people just cannot build muscle from the life of them.
Well, that's what I've noticed. Like I have a good buddy of mine that I coach, and he's my height, but he can hold over 200 pounds and he feels great. Like feels phenomenal. He just holds mass very well. Me, when I get over 200 pounds, I notice a lot of negative effects. And it's so interesting because I've just noticed some people, like you said, the propensity to be able to put on that mass and their body is okay with it. And then I have some other people where it's like they start getting into that size and it's just like all of a sudden they've got high blood pressure or they're fatigued all the time. Like for me, it was like I realized I couldn't do normal things I used to do. Like go on a hike was a pain in the ass. Like I would have to stop and take a break to go on a hike because I was 210 pounds. And I'm like, okay, if I'm not going to be able to walk without having shin splints, like that's not great for my body. But, some people, like I said, he's my height and holds 200 pounds lean like it's nothing. It's crazy to see the differences in some people's bodies and what they can achieve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So what's your next goal? Like, are you taking an off season and are you trying to move up to lightweight? Or are you gonna compete again soon? Like, what's the next move?
Yeah, so at this point, I'm focused on the immediate, so just taking one day at a time, really. So just trying to nail my reverse diet with, just a little bit of added food, just bringing that training intensity back to, taking every set to failure, and really just enjoying training again, because there comes a point in contest prep where you're just like, oh my God, like
just putting in the work.
I have to go train today. This is gonna really hurt. But really, I'm just focused on the immediate future and just like trying to get better, man. Because like, I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't think I was gonna do what I did this past year. I did 3 shows and I did 3 different bodybuilding classes, which blows my freaking mind. I did welterweight at the first show, which was, that was just a fun show. I knew I was 12 weeks out from USA's and I just hopped in for fun. So I did welterweight at the first show, did lightweight at the regional, which was in Alabama 2 weeks before USA's. And then I was just like, going about my business, and the look kept tightening up. And I was like, I could probably make bantamweight. My chances of placing higher, getting a pro card are only going to be higher if I go down a class, because I'll be the tallest guy guaranteed, which if that was the case. So, having placed top 3 at my first national show, to me, that tells me that the only other route to go is just doing more national shows. Ultimately, I would like to be a national champion. So doing NPC nationals, that's going to be my next show, whenever it is.
Yeah.
I doubt it'll be this year, just simply because like I got a lot of stuff going on in life right now, between work and between just wanting to spend more time like with my loved ones, and getting a little bit of normalcy back to my life. I probably could drop the hammer, do the show, but ultimately it'll probably be NPC nationals next year if I had to guess, just because I'm knocking on the door and I'm this close already, and I think really if I get in front of Steve Weinberg, he's gonna like my look. So that's, to me, that's the next move competitively.
I think that's a good thing, man. A lot of people forget to take the time away from stage. You can still bodybuild, and that's where the bodybuilding is done, is away from the contest prep. And I feel like a lot of people get addicted to competing. But with you in that situation, you're so close. Like you said, you're at nationals, you'd be 1 spot away. And it's one of those things where it's like you have to think about doing it sooner than later. But I think that your timeline is almost perfect. You can put on a little bit more size, refine your physique, and then go up there in nationals and probably get the pro card. And that's what you have to do. You have to get your feedback. What was your feedback at USA's? Yeah,
so Bill told me I need to put more size on. Particularly, he didn't say lats specifically, but I looked at all the photos, and the only shots that were even questionable for me losing were the front shots, just because I wasn't as wide as some of the other guys. And then delts, he said, so bigger delts. So that's something when you're a natural guy, you're kind of you're only going to go so far with having big delts. And naturally, like I have the propensity to just put size on my arms without even trying. Like I literally don't do it. There was a period where I didn't train arms for an entire year, but my arms continue to grow. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like you got to look yourself in the mirror and you got to know enough and be critical of yourself as to what you have to improve, and take that kind of in tandem with the judges' feedback. So for me, a lot of my training is tailored towards not only the feedback that I got, but like just knowing that I need to get wider in general. Like, so just hammering delts and lats specifically. But I think from what I surmised out of the show, definitely condition's not going to be an issue.
Nah, you get pretty shredded.
I was like by far the most conditioned guy in my class. So the condition's not an issue, the shape's not an issue. I just need to really work hard to make those front poses better, because side chest is great, side try is great, back double was good. I think my back lat spread could definitely use some work with the width, as well as like the front lat spread, and then the front double, just putting more on the lats and even just opening up more. I think my posing could have been better too, frankly. That was the feedback that I got. But, like I said, even with all that, all the things that need improved, like super close, but, keeping things tight still, bringing things up very slowly, and just trying to give my all in the gym and recover outside of it to get better.
So for anybody that wants to find you online or look at any of your content, where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you guys are just wanting the classic stuff, you can find me, it's cpc.bodybuilding. That's the classic physique page. And then if you want my personal Instagram, it's just my name, Brant.Imhoff. It's Brant. I'll probably be one of the first ones to come up. It shouldn't be too hard to find me there. But those are both of my pages. The bodybuilding page is exclusively bodybuilding, some classic physique results. I've kind of gotten out of the podcasting a little bit, just with my life picking up and my contest preps picking up and whatnot. But it'd be nice to get back into that as well. But lots of show coverage there. And then the personal page is more or less just my life and my competition journey. So
Awesome.
Yeah, that's where y'all can find me.
Awesome. Yeah, man, we appreciate you coming on. It's been great. I've always said that we need more media in bodybuilding, and we need more people that are really passionate about it to run it, because it includes everybody, Mm-hmm. And the only way we're going to grow bodybuilding is by getting the word out and getting other people interested in it. So I think you're doing a really good job of it, and you don't play bias on anything. You really present the information in a way that people can get to know who's coming up or who may be the next in line.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It really means a lot. I've been, listening to y'all's podcast for a while. And, I think you guys are doing a really awesome thing here, just having, all kinds of different perspectives on just getting great bodybuilding content, great fitness content. So I appreciate you guys. It really means a lot.
We appreciate having you on, man. You've been a great guest. So everybody go check out both his pages. And Brant, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, y'all.
This has been Betson and Coffee Unfiltered. Thank you guys for listening.
Make sure to go follow us on social media.